Have you ever had someone in your life who made everything about them? You know the type, charming, manipulative, and somehow you're always walking on eggshells? Yeah, that's not just difficult behavior. That's narcissism. And let me tell you something most people won't. Narcissists seem untouchable, like nothing gets to them. But today, I'm going to show you the truth, because they do break. Their ego, it's paper thin. And if you know what to look for, you'll see the cracks. This talk is about power, your power. And I'm going to walk you through 7 specific triggers that absolutely shatter a narcissist's ego. These aren't games. They're boundaries. They're truth. And they're how you reclaim your voice. When you stop reacting, you start winning. Silence to a narcissist is like oxygen being cut off. They thrive on attention, on chaos, on emotional reactivity. So when you give them nothing, it hits differently. They'll push your buttons just to see if they still have control. They'll bait you, provoke you, twist your words, all to get a rise out of you. Why? Because the moment you react, you validate their power. But when you stay quiet, not cold, not passive, but intentionally still, they lose grip. Narcissists crave supply, emotional energy, praise, anger, fear. Your silence denies them all of it. It sends a message they can't handle. You don't get access to me anymore. It's not about giving the silent treatment to punish. It's about choosing not to feed the drama. When you don't respond to the manipulation, the guilt trips, or the gaslighting, you shift the dynamic. You're no longer in their game. And make no mistake, they notice. They'll act confused. They'll try harder. They might even lash out. But that's proof it's working. Your silence is your strength. It's how you regain control, not over them, but over you. It takes discipline. It takes emotional maturity. It takes knowing your worth well enough to know you don't owe anyone a reaction. And when you master that, the narcissist starts to crumble, not because you attacked them, but because you stopped participating. That is power. No is a complete sentence. And when you say it without guilt, without explaining, without softening it to make someone else comfortable, especially a narcissist, you take back something they've been trying to steal from you: control. Narcissists hate the word no. Not because it's harsh, but because it reminds them they don't own you. These are people who are used to getting their way through manipulation, charm, intimidation, or guilt. They're masters at twisting your boundaries into opportunities for themselves. So the moment you stand firm and say no, without defending your decision or apologizing for it, you draw a line they can't cross. You'll feel the tension rise. You might hear, "Why are you being so difficult?" or "You've changed." And that's exactly the point. You have changed. You're no longer playing the role they assigned you, the one who bends, who over-explains, who makes yourself small to keep the peace. Narcissists thrive when you feel the need to justify yourself. They listen not to understand, but to find a crack in your words they can exploit. When you give them nothing to work with, they're left with their own discomfort. Your unapologetic no becomes a mirror. It reflects their lack of control, their inability to manipulate you, and they can't stand it. And here's the truth. You don't owe anyone a justification for your boundaries. Your life, your time, your energy, these are yours to protect. Saying no without explaining trains people, including narcissists, to respect you or to realize they no longer have access to you in the way they used to. This is not about being rude or cold. It's about clarity. It's about standing in your values. It's about choosing your peace over their approval. Narcissists will try to shame you into submission, make you feel selfish, uncaring, or difficult. That's how they regain power, by making you question your right to say no. Bet when you hold the line, even when it's uncomfortable, you teach them something they never wanted to learn. You are not theirs to control. Your no is a declaration that their manipulation no longer works here. It tells them that the days of you bending, explaining, and compromising your well-being are over, and they will test it again and again. But every time you repeat it, firm, simple, clear, you reinforce your strength, you build self-respect, you heal. Because the person you're really saying yes to in that moment is, you narcissists rely on confusion. They build their power in the gray areas, in the half-truths, the emotional fog, the moments where you start to doubt your memory, your instincts, or your own version of reality. That's where they thrive. Because as long as, if you're disoriented, they can control the narrative. So when you calmly call out the facts, you're not just standing up for yourself. You're tearing down their entire strategy. You're taking the one thing they fear most and putting it on the table: clarity. And narcissists don't do well with clarity, especially when it's grounded in truth they can't twist or spin. Let's be clear. This doesn't mean screaming, blaming, or emotionally unloading. That only feeds them. What breaks them is calm, neutral, factual truth. It's when you say, actually, that's not what happened. Here's what did. And then you leave it there. No drama, no debate, no emotional hook for them to grab onto. That's when you watch the masks start to crack. Because now they're exposed. They can't gaslight you if you're standing firm in reality. They can't rewrite the story if you're no longer playing the confused character in it. And more importantly, you're signaling that you see them for who they really are. They'll often try to spin it back around. You're so sensitive. You're misremembering. You're blowing it out of proportion. That's the pattern. That's the script. But when you calmly hold the truth in front of them, without engaging in their deflection, they're forced to face the fact that you're no longer buying the illusion. And that terrifies them. You don't have to convince them. You don't even have to make them admit anything. That's not the goal. The goal is you knowing what's real and refusing to let them pull you off center. This is where your power lies, not in arguing, but in clarity, not in proving you're right, but in knowing you're not wrong. When you stop over-explaining, stop second-guessing, and just name the facts, you stop being a target. You stop being an emotional resource they can exploit. And narcissists hate that. Because their ego is built on control, on being the one who defines the narrative, who shapes the version of reality that benefits them. When you calmly break that narrative with facts, you disrupt the entire cycle. It takes practice. It takes strength. But every time you choose truth over drama, facts over fear, clarity over chaos, you reclaim a piece of yourself they tried to take. You build trust in your own mind again. And you show them, without saying a single cruel or reactive word, that the days of distortion are done. Confidence is like kryptonite to a narcissist. It dismantles their illusion of control, and they hate it. Because a confident person is unshakable, grounded, and no longer seeking external validation. Narcissists prey on insecurity. They sense it, exploit it, and feed off it. The moment you begin to own your worth without needing their approval, the entire dynamic shifts. You go from someone they can manipulate to someone who is immune to their game. And that doesn't sit well with them, because their power relies on you not fully realizing yours. Confidence doesn't mean arrogance or aggression. It means being so rooted in your value that you stop chasing validation from anyone, especially someone who uses it as a weapon. Narcissists often dangle approval like a carrot on a stick. They give you just enough praise to keep you hooked and then yank it away to keep you off balance. But when you truly believe you're enough as you are, you stop reaching for their approval. You stop bending, shrinking, or people-pleasing to stay in their good graces. And suddenly, they lose their leverage. They may react with rage, sarcasm, or try to undermine your self-belief. They might call you selfish, cold, or accuse you of changing. But what they're really saying is, I can't control you the way I used to. That's the threat they feel. Because narcissists don't want connection, they want dominance. And confidence blocks that. When you walk into a room and don't seek their recognition, when you speak your truth without asking for permission, when you walk away without explaining yourself, that's the kind of power they can't touch. You might notice they become more aggressive or manipulative when you start showing up fully. That's part of the test. They want to know if your confidence is real or just temporary. So they'll push harder, criticize, provoke, guilt trip. But if you stay grounded, if you keep standing in your truth without backing down, you prove to them, and more importantly, to yourself, that you are no longer the person they could mold and control. And that's when their ego takes a hit. Confidence doesn't just protect you from narcissistic manipulation, it repels it. It sends a silent but powerful message. I don't need you to feel whole. That message is devastating to someone whose identity is built on being needed, admired, or feared. Because once you no longer react to their approval or rejection, they lose their grip. You become untouchable, not because you're cold, but because you're clear. You know who you are, you know what you bring to the table, and you're no longer available for relationships that require you to doubt that. This kind of confidence isn't loud, it doesn't need to prove anything. It's the quiet, steady knowing that you have value, with or without their praise. And that realization, when it sinks in, is what begins to rebuild everything they tried to tear down. Narcissists want you in competition mode. They want you comparing yourself to others, to them, to some impossible standard they create, because as long as you're caught up in proving your worth, you're easier to manipulate. They create triangles, pit people against each other, praise someone else just enough to make you feel small, all to keep you off balance. But when you step out of that game, when you stop competing, stop comparing, and just exist in your own lane, they lose a key tactic. You're no longer responding to the bait. You're not chasing their approval, and that throws them off completely. They thrive on hierarchy. They want to be on top and need you to feel like you're underneath. That'll constantly shift the bar, never letting you feel like you're enough. One day you're the golden child. The next day you're being ignored or criticized for the exact same thing they praised you for. But when you stop engaging in that pattern, when you no longer care about their ranking system, you strip them of control. You're saying, I don't need your measurement to know I'm valuable. And that, to a narcissist, is devastating. Refusing to compete doesn't mean you don't care about growth or excellence. It means your growth is defined by you, not by trying to outdo someone else or chase validation that's designed to be withheld. It means you've stepped into self-leadership. Narcissists hate this kind of independence. They want you to believe that your worth is dependent on outperforming others or earning their praise. When you detach from that need, you become self-sufficient in a way they can't stand. You're no longer dancing for their attention, and without that, they don't know how to keep you in line. This can be subtle. Maybe you stop asking what they think of your outfit. Maybe you stop reacting when they compare you to someone else. Maybe you no longer explain yourself when they try to provoke insecurity. Those small shifts are massive because they signal a much larger truth. You're not in competition with anyone. You're not playing their game. You've taken your power back by stepping off the stage entirely. And when that happens, they lose one of their favorite ways to manipulate you. You'll know it's working when they seem irritated, when they try to stir drama just to get a reaction, or when they suddenly start complimenting you again to reel you back in. Stay grounded, keep choosing your own path. When you refuse to compete or compare, you reclaim your peace and you become untouchable in a way they can't manipulate or break. Walking away peacefully is one of the most powerful moves you can make when dealing with a narcissist. Not slamming doors, not throwing accusations, not needing a dramatic exit, just walking away with your dignity intact. That kind of quiet strength drives a narcissist crazy because they don't just want control while you're with them. They want control even after you leave. They want to know they still occupy space in your mind, that you're still hurt, still reactive, still tied to them emotionally. So when you detach with calm, when you leave without needing to be heard, vindicated, or proven right, you take away the last piece of power they think they have. Narcissists expect chaos. They expect a scene, a meltdown, a war. Why? Because it keeps them relevant. It lets them paint you as unstable, bitter, or dramatic. But when you exit quietly and with peace, they don't get the story they were hoping to tell. You deny them the emotional drama they feed on. And more importantly, you protect your energy. You no longer need to defend yourself, prove your side, or seek closure from someone who was never capable of giving it. That's not weakness, it's wisdom. It's the realization that your healing matters more than their opinion. Peaceful detachment is not passive. It's intentional. It's saying, I no longer need your validation, your explanation, or your chaos in my life. It's choosing freedom over friction. You may feel the urge to have one last conversation, to get them to understand, to make them see how much they hurt you. But that urge is part of the trap. Narcissists rarely give genuine closure. They twist your words, deny the past, or shift blame. So when you refuse to engage, in that final round, when you simply choose peace and go, they're left with nothing to fight. And that's when the real impact hits them. They may try to pull you back through guilt, charm, or anger. They'll say you owe them or that you're running away. But don't mistake their reaction for your responsibility. You don't owe anyone a messy goodbye. You owe yourself a future that isn't defined by their dysfunction. Every time you choose peace over reactivity, detachment over drama, tell yourself the most important thing, that you're worth a life where you don't have to fight for respect. That kind of exit, that's power.